Let me ask you a question and be honest. Is the balanced jig the most overrated lure in all of ice fishing? Because out on the ice, it sure feels that way sometimes. Today, we are talking about why that lure seems to be magic for everyone else on the lake, except you. You see them catching fish, you know it works, but in your hands, it's a dud. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will know the exact, non-obvious reason why your lure isn't working. And here's a hint. It has absolutely nothing to do with the color or brand of your lure. The real answer is probably sitting in your rod holder right now, and you don't even realize it's the source of all your problems. So let me know in the comments right now, what's your relationship with the balanced jig? Do you love it, or do you secretly hate its guts? For years, the balanced jig has been pushed as this magic lure. You see it in all the magazines, all the videos. It's supposed to be the ultimate weapon for hard water. So what do? We go out and buy a dozen of them. We get every hot color, every size, and we fill a tackle box with hope. Then we hit the ice, tie one on, and nothing. We watch the guy 50 yards away pulling up walleye after walleye on the exact same lure. So we blame the conditions, we blame the fish, or we go buy another color. It's a frustrating cycle built on the belief that the lure itself does all the work. We're stuck in deeper ways, thinking that just owning the right lure is 90% of the battle. But the truth is, the balanced jig is a technical presentation. It's a tool that requires a specific system to work, and most of us are using it completely wrong from the very start. First things first, let's shatter the biggest myth. It is not the color. I know, we all have that one friend who swears by Wonder Bread or Fire Tiger. We spend a small fortune on custom-painted jigs that look more like art than fishing lures. But I want you to picture this scene. You're out on the ice, you've got your $30 glow-in-the-dark perch patterned masterpiece. You've been jigging for an hour without a single bite. Then an old-timer drills a hole nearby, drops down a simple, unpainted lead-balanced jig from 1985, and proceeds to pull up 3 keeper walleyes in 10 minutes. What's the difference? It isn't the paint job. Fish see profile, action, and vibration long before they see fine-tuned color, especially in the low-light conditions under the ice. Obsessing over color is the #1 distraction that keeps you from focusing on what actually matters, the presentation. It's the easiest thing to blame, so we do. But it's time to look past the tackle box and at our technique. Now let's talk about the first piece of gear that's failing you. Your rod. This is a huge one. Many of us use that one trusty ice rod for everything, from heavy spoons to tungsten jigs. But a balanced jig is a finesse presentation. If your rod is a stiff, heavy-action broomstick, you are killing the lure's potential before it even starts. That kind of rod is designed for ripping spoons and feeling hard thumps. It has no sensitivity for the subtleties of a balanced jig. You can't feel the lure glide, you can't feel it settle, and most importantly, you can't detect those light, upward bites from fish that simply swim up and inhale the bait. You need a rod with a much lighter, faster tip. Think of it like this. Your rod is the conductor's baton and the lure is the orchestra. With a heavy club, you're just bashing away with no finesse. With the right rod, you become a conductor, guiding the lure through a delicate, enticing dance that fish can't resist. That feedback is everything. Next up is the invisible killer of action, your fishing line. This is just as critical as your rod. If you're using thick, heavy 8 or 10-pound monofilament or even heavy fluorocarbon, you are destroying the lure's natural movement. Think about what a balanced jig is designed to do. It's made to glide and swim horizontally on a slack line. Heavy, stiff line has coil memory and creates an incredible amount of drag in the water. Instead of allowing the lure to swim freely in a wide circle, your heavy line acts like a parachute. It slows the fall, straightens out the glide, and makes the lure just kind of pivot instead of swim. It's like trying to fly a kite with a rope instead of a string. The lure is fighting your line the entire time. The ideal setup is a light, thin diameter line like a 3 or 4 pound test fluorocarbon, or a light braid with a fluoro leader. This allows the lure to be free and achieve that maximum wide-circling glide that triggers strikes. Let's zoom in even closer to the point where your line meets your lure. Your connection is everything. This is a small detail that makes a world of difference. How many of you tie your balance jig directly to your line with a tight Palomar or improved clinch knot? That's a huge mistake. Tying directly to the eyelet chokes the lure. It restricts its ability to pivot and swim, forcing it into an unnatural, stiff movement. At the other extreme, some people use a massive, heavy-duty snap swivel that they use for their summer crankbaits. This adds weight and bulk right at the nose of the lure, completely throwing off its balance and killing the delicate action. It's like putting truck tires on a race car. The best solution is one of two things, either a small, lightweight snap, or even better, a loop knot. A loop knot, like a Rapala knot, gives the lure a small ring of line to pivot on, allowing it to move and glide with complete freedom. It's the most natural connection you can have. Now we need to talk about the physics of the lure itself. So many anglers misunderstand the fundamental purpose of a balance jig. They think you're supposed to jig it up and down like a spoon or a tungsten jig. That's completely wrong. The magic of a balance jig is in the glide. The wings on its back are not for show. They are airfoils designed to make the lure swim horizontally when it falls. When you lift the lure, you are simply loading it with potential energy. The real action happens on the drop. When you let it fall on a slack line, it shoots out to the side, circling and gliding as it sinks. It perfectly imitates a dying or fleeing baitfish. If you've ever watched one on an underwater camera, it's incredible. It will dart 5 feet to the left, then on the next jig, it will dart 5 feet to the right. This is what calls fish in from a distance. If you're just pounding it up and down, you're not using the lure as it was designed. You've basically got a very expensive, very ineffective vertical jig. This leads directly to the single biggest mistake I see on the ice. Your cadence is killing the vibe. Most anglers overwork their balance jigs. They are constantly twitching, popping, and jigging without any rhyme or reason. This frantic, non-stop motion is terrible for a balance jig. Instead of a graceful, gliding minnow, your lure looks like a spastic piece of metal having a seizure in one spot. It just spins and flails. Think about a cold, lethargic perch or walleye in 30-degree water. Their metabolism is slow. They are not going to chase down some hyperactive thing that's buzzing all over the place. The correct cadence is almost always slower and more deliberate than you think. It's about a lift, a fall, and then a pause. The pause is the most important part. Your constant need to be doing something is actively spooking fish and preventing them from committing to a strike. You have to break the habit of constant jigging. Let's get specific about the movement. There's a huge difference between a pop and a lift. When you're fishing a heavy spoon like a Castmaster, you give it a sharp, aggressive pop with your wrist to make it flutter and flash. If you do that with a balance jig, you'll often cause it to spin and foul on your line. It's too violent. A balance jig requires a smooth, deliberate lift. You're not snapping the rod tip up. You are smoothly raising your entire rod about 1 to 2 feet. Imagine you are just lifting the lure up to take a look at it, then immediately dropping the rod tip back down. This smooth upward motion is enough to get the lure moving, and as it reaches the top of its arc, it will naturally kick out to the side. The drop that follows is what engages the wings and starts that hypnotic circular glide. So, stop popping your lure, start lifting it with purpose. It's a completely different feel, and it produces a completely different result in the water. To truly master this, you have to understand what I call the pendulum effect. It's a concept that is critical for timing your next jig stroke. After you lift and drop your lure, it glides out to the side on a slack line. It swims out, let's say, 3 feet to the left, and then slowly settles. Now, on your next lift, what happens? The lure is pulled back towards the center, back to directly below your fishing hole, before it can then glide out to the other side. Here's the mistake. Many anglers get impatient. They don't wait for the lure to complete its glide and settle. They lift again while it's still moving away from them. This effectively yanks the lure backwards, killing its momentum and ruining the natural swimming motion. You have to wait for the lure to finish its journey, come to a complete stop, and then, and only then, do you initiate the next lift. This timing is the key to creating a consistent, rhythmic side-to-side sweeping motion that fish find irresistible. I've mentioned it before, but the pause needs its own dedicated block because it is, without a doubt, the most important part of the entire presentation. 90% of your bites on a balance jig will come when the lure is completely, totally still. The glide and the movement are what attract the fish and get their attention. The pause is what gives them the opportunity to commit and eat. After you lift and drop, and the lure completes its glide and settles, you must wait. I'm not talking about a 1 or 2 second pause. I mean a real disciplined pause. Count to 5, then count to 10. On tough days, I've counted to 20 or even 30 before getting a bite. It feels unnatural. It feels like you're not doing anything. But from the fish's perspective, they see this minnow swim in, and then it just hangs there, vulnerable and helpless. It's the easiest meal they'll get all day. Your impatience is the biggest obstacle. Learn to love the pause, and you will learn to love the balance jig. Here is a simple concept that feels wrong to most anglers. Slack line is your friend, not your enemy. We are trained from a young age to always keep a tight line to feel the bite. With a balance jig, a tight line on the drop is the #1 killer of the glide. It's a simple matter of physics. The lure cannot swim horizontally if it's being pulled vertically by a tight line. To achieve the proper action, the moment you complete your upward lift, you must drop your rod tip faster than the lure can fall. This creates a completely slack line. The lure is now free, untethered, able to glide and swim just as it was designed. If you just slowly lower your rod tip, you are essentially guiding the lure straight back down to the bottom. It might have a little bit of a swing, but you are neutering its action by at least 75%. So, practice this motion, a smooth 1-foot lift, followed by a rapid drop of the rod tip to create that essential moment of slack. It's in that moment that the magic happens. Let's be blunt. If you're trying to master a balance jig without modern electronics like a flasher or sonar, you are fishing with a massive handicap. It's like trying to shoot a target in the dark. You can do it, but your odds of success are incredibly low. Your electronics are your eyes under the water. They allow you to see exactly how fish are reacting to your cadence. Are they flying in from the side when you start jigging? That means the glide is working. Are they rising up to look at your lure during the pause but then fading away? That means something is wrong. Maybe your pause isn't long enough. Maybe your lure profile is too big. Maybe they are spooked by your heavy line or snap swivel. Without a flasher, you're just guessing. With one, you get instant feedback that allows you to adjust your presentation in real time until you crack the code for that specific day. It's the single best tool for shortening the learning curve. Another classic mistake is fishing your balance jig way too high in the water column. I see anglers marking fish on the bottom and then jigging their lure 5, 6, or even 10 feet above them. They have this idea that they need to draw the fish way up to get them to strike. While that can sometimes work for hyper-aggressive fish, most of the time, especially for wary walleye and perch, it's a losing strategy. These fish are relating to the bottom. That's where they live and feed. Your presentation should be there too. A good rule of thumb is to keep your lure within 6 to 12 inches of the bottom. When you lift and let it glide, it will swim out and up slightly, looking like a nervous baitfish trying to escape before settling back down. This keeps the lure in the prime strike zone and presents a much more natural and tempting target for fish that are looking for an easy meal near the substrate. Get it down in their living room. Now let's talk about the opposite problem, fishing too low and constantly hitting the bottom. You find the bottom, which is good, but then with every single jig stroke you pound the lure into the silt or mud. While a small puff of silt can sometimes attract fish, Constantly dredging the bottom is a terrible idea. First, it can dull your hook points. Second, it often causes your treble hook to get fouled with mud, weeds, or other debris, which completely kills the lure's look and action. And third, it makes a ton of unnatural commotion that can actually spook weary fish. The goal is to know precisely where the bottom is and to keep your lure just above it. You want the lure to be able to complete its full glide without ever touching down. A great way to do this is to find the bottom, then reel up one full turn of your handle. This will usually put you in that perfect 6 to 12-inch zone, allowing your lure to dance freely just above the muck. We have to address the treble hook dilemma: to bait or not to bait. This is a question that divides many anglers. Some guys will take a huge, chunky minnow head and load it onto the bottom treble hook. Their thinking is that the scent will help attract fish. While that can be true, it often does more harm than good to the lure's performance. A big piece of bait can completely throw off the lure's center of gravity. It creates drag and acts like a rudder, preventing the lure from gliding properly. It will often cause it to fall nose down or spin in a tight circle. Sometimes a completely bare hook is the most effective presentation. If you do want to add scent, think small. A single maggot or waxworm, or even just the eyeball of a minnow, is often enough to add a little flavor without ruining the multi-thousand-dollar engineering that went into the lure's design. The action is more important than the scent, so don't sacrifice it. Let's talk about matching the hatch, but in a way that actually matters for balance jigs. Most people think this just means matching the color of the local baitfish. We've already established that color is secondary. What's far more important is matching the size and the profile of the primary forage in that body of water. If you're on a lake that is absolutely packed with 3-inch emerald shiners and you're using a tiny 1-inch balance jig, you might get ignored. Your lure doesn't match the profile of the meal that the predator fish are keyed in on. Conversely, if the main forage is small, freshwater shrimp and tiny fry, a massive 5-inch balance jig is going to look out of place and intimidating. Do a little research, know what the primary baitfish are in the lake you're fishing. Then choose a balance jig that most closely mimics that size. This is far more crucial than whether your lure is silver or gold. One factor that almost everyone ignores is the environment itself, specifically current. Even under a thick sheet of ice, there can be a subtle but significant current, especially in rivers, reservoirs, or on large, wind-blown lakes. This gentle flow of water have a dramatic effect on your presentation. If you're using a very light balance jig, the current can push against your thin line, creating a large bow in it. This prevents your lure from falling vertically and can completely kill the slack line drop needed for the glide. It basically just sweeps your lure downstream. In these situations, you may need to upsize to a heavier balance jig that can cut through the current more effectively. You also need to be aware of your position relative to the current. Sometimes, simply moving to the upcurrent or downcurrent side of a structure can make all the difference in presenting your lure naturally. Don't assume the water under the ice is always perfectly still. This next point is psychological, but it is absolutely critical to your success. I'm talking about the confidence game. If you go out on the ice with a balance jig that you don't truly believe in, you are destined to fail. Why? Because you won't fish it with the necessary focus and discipline. You'll cut corners. You won't wait for the full pause. You'll get sloppy with your lifts. And after 10 or 15 minutes with no bites, you'll say, "See, I knew this thing didn't work," and you'll switch to your old reliable spoon. An angler who has confidence in the balance jig will fish it correctly, patiently, and for much longer. They will make those small adjustments to their cadence and position until they find what's working. Fishing is as much a mental game as it is a physical one. If you don't have confidence in your lure, the fish will be able to tell. You have to believe in the system to make the system work for you. Another common pitfall is what I call one-trick pony syndrome. You watch a video or a friend shows you one specific cadence that worked on one particular day. Maybe it was a lift-pause rhythm. So you learn that one trick, and you use it every single time you go out, no matter the conditions or the mood of the fish. But fish are not robots. Their behavior changes daily, even hourly. Some days they want a much more aggressive, faster presentation with a higher lift and a shorter pause to trigger a reaction strike. On other, tougher days, they might want an agonizingly slow and subtle presentation with a tiny 6-inch lift and a 20-second pause. You cannot be a one-trick pony. You have to be willing to experiment constantly throughout the day. Change your lift height, vary your pause length, try a double pump, keep adjusting until you find the rhythm that the fish want on that day. The best anglers are always adapting. Now, here is a pro-level tip that leverages the balance jig in a way most people never consider. You need to incorporate the dead stick. A dead stick is simply a second rod placed in a holder with the bait left to sit perfectly still. After you've been actively jigging your balance jig for a minute or two to call fish in, put that rod in a holder and do not touch it for a full 2 minutes. The balance jig, with its perfectly horizontal and natural minnow profile, becomes the ultimate dead stick presentation. Fish drawn in by the gliding motion will often be wary of the moving bait, but they will not hesitate to slurp up the minnow that is now hanging there, motionless and vulnerable. Many of my largest, most cautious fish have been caught this way. The jigging calls them in, and the dead sticking catches them. It's a 1-2 punch that is incredibly effective, yet almost nobody does it with a balance jig. Finally, let's bring it all together. The reason the balance jig fails for so many people is that they think there is one single secret. They are looking for the magic color or the magic cadence. But the truth is, there is no single secret. Success is the sum of all the parts we've talked about. It is a complete system. It's having the right sensitive rod paired with the right light line. It's using a loop knot for maximum freedom of movement. It's executing a smooth lift, followed by a slack line drop to initiate a wide glide. It's having the discipline to give the lure a painfully long pause. It's doing all of this at the correct depth with confidence while paying attention to your electronics. Missing just one of these crucial elements can break the entire system. It can be the difference between a full bucket and going home cold and empty-handed. It's a game of details, and with the balance jig, the details are everything. So, as you can see, it was never about the $20 custom-painted lure. It was about the $2 spool of 6-pound line, the knot you chose to tie, and the way you lifted your arm. The single biggest, most game-changing revelation for most anglers is that the balance jig is fundamentally a do-nothing lure. The magic happens when you get out of its way. The magic happens when you let the lure do its job and you do almost nothing at all. You are not jigging in the traditional sense. You are simply initiating a glide and then waiting. That's the secret. And understanding this changes your entire approach. You stop blaming your lures and you start refining your system. You stop hoping for a bite and you start making it happen with purpose. Thank you so much for watching. If this video finally made things click for you, do me a favor and hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more no-nonsense fishing advice that breaks down the why. Now I have to ask you, what is the one thing you are going to change the next time you tie on a balanced jig? Let me know in the comments below.